as well. So it's always nice to connect with someone else that does men work, and his journey is going to amaze you, and what he does in the book that he wrote. Mark, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, Tony. How are you, brother?
Oh man, I am doing well. It's a pleasure
Good.
to have you on the show, man.
Thank you.
And everything. So where are you from?
I am actually from the Pacific Northwest. Born in Oregon, raised in Idaho. Now I live in Washington State. So
All right. Well traveled.
yeah, just
well
in
traveled.
this corner of the United States.
Yeah. So you do men's work, correct?
I do.
Right.
That's my latest endeavor.
Okay. And what is that like? How did you get into it?
I got into it because of my experience, my grief experience, if you will, and walking that journey, which I'm now 30 years removed from, and we can talk about that in a little more detail. But I've always been in, I guess, what you would call support roles in my professional life, for working for organizations in human resources, organizational development, helping people become their best and also navigate their own, I don't want to say trauma, but navigate the workplace, navigate their personal life as they're working. So I've always helped people in that aspect. And then last year I had my memoir published of my own personal grief experience, which occurred 30 years ago, of losing my first wife to cancer when I was in my mid-20s. And that spurred the movement to, I think it's time to branch out and leave the corporate world, if you will, and let's try to help some other men. It started dawn on this, like, I've got a story to share. Maybe I can help others, and I can come alongside others and offer whatever support might be needed. Because that was one thing that I was missing when I look back, is the support of other men at that time. And some of it was my own fault, to be honest with you. I pushed a lot of people away. I don't want to say I did a lot of the wrong things, but if I knew now what I know, if I knew then what I know now, I probably would have done it differently. So,
and that's the beautiful part about the journey, right? As men, no one ever teaches us how to do this thing. We're taught to man up, not to cry. Famous line: "You keep crying, I'm giving you something to cry for." I'm already crying.
Exactly.
Nothing to cry for. What are you doing? Right? And so the long-term effects, I don't think they really understood what it did to us, right? Not being able to process our emotions and things like that. And this is just my opinion. It's like neglecting the one thing about ourselves that make us complete as men, right? That connects us with our partners and or people around us, things like that. And then as we go through it, as we go through that process, it's you learn, and it takes good men like yourself that's out there doing the work to help these men actually connect with that and begin that process of understanding. Now you talk about your memoir. Hold up your book again so people can see. Yeah, man. So you guys got to check this out. Where can they find your book at? I'm putting links down below as well. Yeah,
it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, iTunes, both in hard copy and in not audiobook, but digital copy. And like I'm referencing what you just said about, men are not supposed to cry, man up, I'll give you something to cry about. That's where the title came from, of Cowboys Are Not Supposed to Cry. And I've got a subtitle, which is, and the best thing you can do with death is to ride off from it, because that's what we're told, man up, ride off from it. And that actually comes from a line in a Western movie where, best thing you can do with death is to ride off from it. And that's what I did for a number of years, is I basically buried it, stuffed it, and not that it didn't affect me, but I didn't let anybody see that it affected me. And I didn't talk about it. I didn't bring it up. I didn't share my story in any way, shape, or form. I just kind of moved on and said, I'm not going to deal with it. And in my opinion, God doesn't always allow that to happen. Unhealed trauma will always resurface in one way or another. And that's what it did for me about 20 years later. So, which led to me writing the book and going back. And that's the one thing I kind of comment I want to make is, I didn't write the book right after she died. It was almost 30 years later that I finally sat down and started writing the book. So some of my memories are vague. Some of my memories have maybe morphed, changed over time. But I did my best to capture what I was going through at the time and what I was dealing with, and my actual experience and my story.
Yeah. Now you get real intimate in your book about
Yeah.
what happened. Just for the audience,
Yeah.
give them a taste of that journey, if you don't mind,
Mhm.
about where it all began. You know what I'm saying?
So,
With
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I mean, to try to be as succinct as possible. It's like, when I first met Luca in college, she had already survived non-Hodgkin's lymphoma when she was in her teens. So there was always this in the background kind of that I may get cancer again. There's a possibility of reoccurrence. We'd been married, and we got married, both of us in our early 20s. We've been married for about 2.5 years, I believe, 2 years, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of, I think, 24, which is very rare, for young women to get breast cancer.
Right.
We were living in Bellingham, Washington at the time, just the two of us, no family close. And they immediately, wheeled her into surgery to do an ultra radical mastectomy on the one breast, lymph nodes, took all of that, and she spent time in the hospital. And it was traumatic because it was just the two of us going through that. I mean, we had some support, don't get me wrong, friends, and I think some family members came to town, but it was like back in this was 1993. That was kind of the preferred method. It's like they immediately wheeled you into surgery and started doing, some radical things, if you will, where now it's not as invasive. So dealing with that, and then we moved back to Idaho where family was, and she kind of went into why am I drawing a blank on the word? Remission for about a year and a half, and then discovered a lump in her other breast. Went to the doctor. The doctor referred her, because of her history, referred her to an oncologist. They did X-rays, did some MRIs, did a bunch of, and they found a golf ball sized lump in her left lung. That immediately started the whole process again. They didn't do any kind of surgery, but they wheeled her into chemotherapy, started doing radiation. That was in October of 1992. She asked the doctor point blank, what's the prognosis with this? He said, it's rare. He goes, it's serious. He goes, most women, he goes, I've seen 5 years. But I'm also a believer in miracles. And I think I've seen women beat this. So we walked out of there thinking, okay, 5 years. This is what I was thinking. I got 5 years. We're going to beat this. We're young. You're young. Other than this, you're healthy. We're both healthy. I'll do whatever I can to save you. We'll make it. She lasted 5.5 months. She died the following April. It was just a downward, immediate, within a month, it was just a quick downward spiral. So from my perspective, standing there as a young man, watching the person you pledged to be with really get sick and die, and not being able to do anything about it other than help with the day-to-day things, I couldn't stop this train, and as much as I wanted to get off, there was no way I was getting off, but I couldn't stop it. And that was one of the hardest things I ever did. I mean, her death was very peaceful, but it also, I stood there and held her hand while she died. So watching her slip away from me. And then one of the things I write about in my book is turning away from her and walking away from her when I had promised not to walk away from her. Was one of the hardest things, if not the hardest thing I've ever done, because I had nothing, no kids, no, I had family around and friends, but we had no kids. It was just the two of us. I walked back to an empty house and it was just me. And I was like, what do I do with all these dreams that we had over the last 5 years of a lifetime together? I'm 28. I'm going to live hopefully for another 50, 60, who knows, years. What do I do now? That was the biggest hurdle. It was like, and how do I reinvent my life? And basically, to be honest with you, Tony, I didn't. I kind of stuffed it. I dealt with it for the first I went through the whole raw grief emotions for the first 6 months. And then I kind of put it away and said, she's not coming back. We're moving on. And didn't deal with it. And then that led to some other things down the line after I got remarried. And so that's kind of my journey in a nutshell, if you will.
Right.
So.
Wow. Very similar journeys, just different people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So putting all of that down and trying to compress it in, I can only imagine the road that it took you down once it decided to come out. I know mine was wild.
Yeah.
Like I was never into drugs or anything like that, but I had an addiction with weights. And so I would go work out. That's all I did. Just work out, just got big,
Yeah.
right? Then next thing you know, I decided that I was going to try to see if I can hurt myself,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because my grief started manifesting itself, right? And so I had weights at home, so I didn't have to go anywhere.
Mhm.
There was nobody there to stop me anyway, right?
Right.
Said, what's the worst that can happen? It crushes me. Oh, well, no one to ever find out.
Yeah.
Who's going to check
Exactly.
up on me, right?
You're right.
Yeah, who's going to check up
I
on me?
hear you.
And only thing that happened, and I keep laughing, I said, the only thing that happened, I got stronger.
Hmm. Yeah.
My instinct was to just pick it up and put it back.
You got physically stronger, right?
I got physically stronger, right? But
Yeah.
I guess I didn't understand it,
Hmm.
because people used to always tell me, because before my son passed away, I was into the church, right?
Yeah.
And for community, my son loved going to Bible study, Sunday school, and be around
Hmm.
other kids. And once in a while, he'll come with me to the big room, and what I'm saying, he would climb up on me initially and just fall asleep. So I would have to carry his little butt all the way out.
Right.
All right, So when he passed away, I did go back, and I don't know. I started taking things personal with people. Oh, he's in a better place. No, don't.
Yeah.
Supposed to.
Exactly.
And it closed me off from it for quite some time that I didn't even want to go back. I was just like, why? Right.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was lost.
Yeah.
I was
No.
lost in this world. But it was honestly, I never walked away from it, but I did take a break from it.
Hmm.
It was like, I needed some clarity.
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah.
Right. And the reason being, because I found that people mean well when you're grieving, right?
Hmm. Absolutely.
They
No
say
doubt.
things that may feel like a punch in the chin, especially to a man. It bruises your
Yeah.
ego. And
Yep.
in the back of my mind, just like you, I was experiencing that guilt, like,
Yeah.
wow, my son just passed away. Who's going to believe me that he passed away from unknown causes?
Right.
I wonder what they're thinking. So that guilt of what other people was thinking about me.
Yeah.
And eventually, it was, I just isolated myself.
Hmm.
I walked away, and I was just like, and I found myself within it, so to speak.
Yeah.
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 So yeah, like,
Well,
what was your experience like during that course?
what was
Was
my experience?
well, like isolation, like we talked
Yeah.
about the stages of grief,
Well,
and one thing I understood about the stages of grief, like they were a good foundation, but they were written for cancer patients. So I was like, wow, I have to redefine this thing.
you have to. Yeah.
Right, right.
Well, that was interesting. I mean, a couple of things that you said is like, because there was so much caregiving involved with her last 3 months. I mean, because the cancer had spread, it had spread to, she had a lump in her hip where she could barely walk, which was pressing on a nerve. A lump ended up in the back of her neck, which gave her tremendous headaches. So there was a lot of caregiving that I was providing to her those last few months. And then when she died, it's like suddenly that was all gone. I got nobody to care for. Throw some food in the bowl for the cats, and you're good. It's like, okay, what do I do now with all my time? And in a lot of ways, I felt like I lost my identity, because my identity was so wrapped up in her, in our marriage, in taking care of her. It's like, who am I now? And then all those questions of what do I want? Who do I want to be? What am I going to do with the rest of my life? And those are hard questions, especially when you're so focused on something else, and the grief over losing all those dreams. And then, like you said, the experience of going through that and the stages, I was angry a lot. I mean, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't show that to people. And part of the reason I didn't show that to people was because I was, in my mind, I was expected to behave a certain way as a man. You're expected to be a good boy, if you will, a good guy, kind to others, show them that you're strong. And so I got angry late at night, at home by myself. That's when the rage hit, and things, breaking dishes and breaking things in the house. So yeah, the stages were there, but then it's interesting. You talked about, kind of distancing yourself from it. I did it kind of in a different way, where I just moved forward on the outside, I mean, and if you look at my life, and I've looked at my resume, if you will, my CV, and it's like, I've been really successful in life from an outside point of view. I've been promoted, I've gotten, new jobs and made more money and just continue to move up the ladder in different positions. But it's like, but on the inside, I was just stuck. I was stuck back there at that moment and didn't know how to get out of it. And, thank God for the love of my wife, who finally looked at me about 10 years ago and said, just some stuff you need to deal with. And I support you in dealing with it, but I'm going to make you deal with it. And, that led to me going to a counselor and working through some of the stuff, which then eventually led to her encouragement to write a book, his encouragement to write a book. I mean, she was the first one that brought it up to me. But you should tell your story. I'm like, I'm not putting all this crap out there, because she knew about it all when we got married. She knew my story. I didn't hide it from her, but that process of going through that and peeling back the layers of the onion, if you will. Because I was trying to live, and I talk about this in my book, about what I thought and believed others expected of me and what society expected of me as a man. And a lot of it was wrong, to be very honest with you. A lot of it was misguided, but it's what I thought people expected, and it's only been in the last few years that I've tried to be more authentic and more real about who I am. I mean, and it's okay for me to miss my first wife. We had a short life together, short time together. I am very happy now. I'm very contented. I think you and I talked earlier, or when we talked earlier, I'm remarried, been remarried for over 25 years now. So I got remarried pretty quickly after my first wife died, because I was it. I'm moving on. I didn't move forward, but I moved on. We've got a daughter who's turning 18 next month. So my life from the outside is like, I've moved on, but inside I'm still carrying a lot of the grief and the pain, and I still miss her. But that's okay to still miss her, because I'm happy now. There's a life after. There's a good life after. And that whole thing of she'd want you to be happy. I agree with that, but I don't want to hear that, necessarily. Some of those sorts of things. It's like, I don't want to be. I know she wouldn't want me to be miserable for the rest of my life, So it's carrying both of those things and knowing that it's okay to still have that sorrow in my heart. In fact, I'll be honest with you. I cried a couple of weeks ago. Some stuff came to the surface, and sometimes it comes out of the blue. Something triggers it, and I sat there I was outside and I sat there staring at the sky going, I still miss you. You've been gone 30 years and I still miss you, because there's all those what ifs, and you and I talked about this in a previous conversation. It's like, what will my life be like now? I mean, they're kind of nonsense questions, because that's not the way it went, but at the same time, they pop up sometimes. And the question of what would she look like now? She died when she was 27. She was just about to turn 28, I believe. And like I said, I may have my numbers wrong, but she'd be in her mid 50s now. What would she look like now? She would not look like the woman that I have pictured in my head, because she was a young lady. I mean, she would be in her 50s now. She would look very different, as we all do as we age. But I don't know what she would look like. Yeah, exactly. The gray. So there's those kind of questions that I live with. It's like, because she never got to grow older. We didn't grow older together. I'm growing older with a different woman who I love dearly and has made my life wonderful. And I have a wonderful daughter, but it's different. And just juxtaposing those two different lives, if you will, sometimes it's like, it's odd. I wake up some days going, this is my life now, sort of thing. And that was part of, it's like, I think we, as men, we bury that sometimes and we don't talk about that. So it's like, hey, maybe I can help others. Maybe I can come along others and say, don't waste 20 years of your life. And I shouldn't say waste. I didn't waste 20 years of my life, but I wasn't living fully, I don't believe I was. My current wife and I have talked about that, It's like, wasn't really living from an authentic of who I was, who I wanted to be, and I've been blessed that God has brought her into my life. I've been blessed that God's brought a lot of things full circle, and I'll just share this real quickly. I grew up around horses, riding horses. I mean, not all the time, but we had a few horses growing up and stuff, hence kind of the cowboy title in my book. But, after I got married to Luca, and then after she died, I just kind of gave up on the horse things. Like, I'll never be around horses again. Well, when my daughter was 5, she got interested in horses. She's been competing. She competed for quite a few years. She owns her own horse. I'm back riding horses. It's like God's brought that full circle. You know what I mean? He brought a daughter into my life who loves horses, and so God brought horses back into my life. So it's just like, wow, I never thought that would happen again. But he redeems. I believe he redeems a lot of. If we allow him to redeem things, he will redeem things for us.
I definitely understand that.
Yeah.
I understand, because I have seen the videos with you on a horse, and it looks like you're in your element. You're having fun.
I'm in my element.
Yeah, my friend. I've only ridden a horse once.
Oh.
Once, and that was just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
During COVID, a friend of mine, she had horses. She says, "Tony, you want to go riding?" And I was like, "I've never ridden a horse before, but I always had dreams of riding a horse."
Yeah. Get up on there.
So she introduced me to her little gentle giant. And she goes, "He'll take care of you. Don't worry about it." So the first thing the horse does when I go up to him, I'm looking at the horse, and the horse looks at me. He signals for me to come over. And when I come over there, he just pulls me in close and takes his head and just lays it on my shoulder.
Oh, there you go.
And I just laid there and I just hugged him. And we just stayed there. And she was like, "See, he got you." And
he
so
got you.
I had a beautiful time, man. It was wonderful. It was so much fun. And
good.
So now one of my journeys along the way, because my son used to love riding horses. So, and it dawned on me this journey that we're on, where we make our home at, right? So when I finally get my home built and have the land, I'm gonna get myself a couple of horses.
Yep.
And just want to ride around the property or something like that,
Yeah.
And, it's something I've never got the chance to do with him.
Yeah.
But he looks so happy.
Right.
It's going, I wonder, just something. Will it make things better or things like that? But I don't know, just something that feels good.
Yeah, it's finding that thing that brings you joy,
right.
And where everything else just kind of melts away, if you will. It's like, okay, I'm in this moment. You're living in that moment, if you will. For me, I'm living in that moment. It's like the stresses of work, the stresses of life, they kind of melt away. In fact, I talk about in my book, my first birthday, 4 months after she died that summer, is I went and rode a horse up in the mountains, a horse that we had previously owned that we had sold to some friends who lived up in the mountains. I went up to their place. They allowed me. I took the horse up into the mountains by myself on my birthday. And that was, and I talk about that in my book, how it took me out of my pain, if you will. But then, moving on from that, I, got remarried and moved away. And it's like, okay, horses became this distant memory in the past. But like I just explained, now God's brought it full circle. And, my daughter owns her own horse. It's like, so we get to ride a lot. So it's pretty cool.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Now we talked about unfolding because men, I think there's a lot of men out there that don't understand that there's two different processes: the grieving process and the healing process.
Yeah.
And so I was asked a question the other day, and they was going, "So what do you think are the differences?" And I said, from my opinion, because everybody has their own opinion about it, right? And it's true, because there's no right or wrong answer to it. So the simplest way I've always looked at it was that grieving was the connective part of it. You're reconnecting with yourself, right? You're reconnecting through your grief. In those moments, those multiple moments that you had, those memories, if you will, you're reconnecting and reminding yourself of what they meant to you. So it's emotional. Whereas the healing process is more of, as you said, unfolding, unpeeling that onion and really diving deep into it and getting to those unresolved answers. So I look at grief as a trigger to the healing. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's well put. It's like grieving is acknowledging what you've lost in a way. And I don't really like the term accepting necessarily, because I don't accept it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like God, I still have the question of God, why would you take a healthy young woman at that age, and have her get breast cancer and die? It's like, so accepting it is kind of not in my vocabulary, but acknowledging that that's what happened to me. She's not coming back. She died, so I'm acknowledging it and I'm grieving that loss. But then the healing is kind of, like you said, peeling back the layers of the onion so I can move forward. So I can move forward in my life, not just move on. And I've talked with some people about this, some other clients, and especially men. It's like, that my definition, the difference between moving on and moving forward is moving on. We move on the outside.
Right.
We do what
Right.
we hold a funeral. We say the right things. We acknowledge it, but we keep the room exactly the same. We don't get rid of any of their stuff. So on the outside, we're moving on, and some people need to do that, and I'm not discounting that at all.
Mhm.
But are you really moving forward as far as a new life?
Yes.
A life after, because there is a life after, whether you want it to or not. There's a life after, and now you have a choice to make. And honestly, it took me a long time. I'd make little choices, but to really go, I'm going to live now my life after, with no regrets, with carrying the joys and the sorrows, but actually live and move forward and see what else God had. Because I'm still here. That's one of the things. I was actually talking to my coach, and they made a comment about, you could write a book, and we were just being very kind of blunt. It's like, you could write a book that says she's dead now, you're not. It's like, and that's the raw truth. She's dead, and I'm not. I'm still here. So what does that mean for me? And those are hard things to identify, and it's taken me years. And so I give people grace. I mean, I'm trying to give myself grace that it's taking me years to get to this point. And I know some people, move on right away, move forward right away. They're able to move forward. More power to them. It took me years to kind of get this, and I just didn't want to deal with it. For whatever reason, I just did not want to deal with it. It's like, so.
And I thought I wasn't dealing with it neither. And I don't know, somehow, some way, I ended up where I was, and I'm still growing, right? And so I didn't know if I was fast tracked or anything. Like, does this happen to everybody that that's called to do it, or
right?
And I'm saying that to say I was very naive in the beginning because I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
I didn't. And so not until, like I said, up to 3 years ago, and then all of a sudden, all of those things started clicking. I was like, huh. And so my curiosity got the best of me, and I kept telling myself, you're not going to beat me. You're not going to beat me. It beat me. It manhandled me like I was somebody's ragdoll toy, man. And anger, just like you said before, right? Anger and all of these different things, and trying to find support, realizing there's none out there for us, right?
Very little.
Well, now there's more.
There's getting a lot more.
Right. Yes. And that's beautiful. Since I started this 3 years ago, you could throw a rock across the ocean and barely hit anyone doing men's work, right?
Absolutely.
And now it's this beautiful thing. They understand the need.
Yeah.
They definitely understand the need. And it's like, now you understand your place, right?
Yeah.
And everybody has their own specific niche.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a beautiful thing, because it allows us to tackle those many different layers, for as mental health, right? Now, did you struggle deeply within your mental health when you was going through it? Because I think a lot of people don't understand yet your mental health is affected on so many different levels.
Yeah. Looking back, absolutely. I put on a brave face when I went to work, because that's what I was supposed to do. You bury it. But yeah, walking around in a fog a lot of the times, not, I don't want to say that I went through depression. Maybe I did, for a while, but it's like, just kind of, when I was home, it was just like, it was just like, I'm done. The effort was so hard, because you had to put in the effort at work and when you're around other people and that sort of thing. And it doesn't mean every day was bad, but yeah, I struggled with that, and struggled, like I said, struggled with my own identity of who I was and who I was supposed to be, or who I thought I was supposed to be. Well, what about who you want to be, and trying to figure that out, and honestly, that took me a long time, because I'd never really asked myself those questions before,
Right. And I'm glad that you said that, because a lot of men are, well, and women as well. I don't want to exclude them, because this is sort of like a universal thing. After you lose someone important to you like that, you do struggle with identity. And I can't remember the last part of it, but identity confusion.
Yeah.
Right? Because now you have to reconfigure everything. And I think when we say that, it's like people go, okay, well, I can become this different person. And I go, it's really not that easy.
No, it's not that easy.
Yeah, because there's going to be moments now that you've started this journey, there's going to be moments that's not going to be, it's not going to be necessary when you get here.
Right.
And so it's a whole new concept of who you're becoming. But also I tell them, if you can keep one foot in front of the other, it's not going, I'm not going to say that's going to get easier, but you will begin to start to breathe again.
Yep.
Take your time. Don't worry about what they're doing over here. That's no concern of you. You just take your time, and you get there when you get there.
Absolutely, because everybody's journey through this is unique to them. Yeah.
Well, and I love what you said, and I'm about to use it right now. It's a long, hard journey to get to a place of acknowledgement. And I love that, because I actually put a post up not too long ago talking about acceptance. I said, just because you get to a place of acceptance, now I love the word acknowledgement. So I may have to steal that from you.
You may have to. No worries.
But maybe I'm gonna jack it and tag you and be like, I did it. Here it is. We're changing this. But it takes a long time to get to a place of acknowledgement. And acknowledgement just means that you acknowledge your life without this individual.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But it does not mean that the hurt's going to stop.
Exactly. No, exactly.
And I think people are like, I had a client tell me not too long ago, I've accepted this. I've accepted that they're not going to be here anymore. And why is this still happening? And, and he was a man too. So again, ego and pride. He's like, I did everything, and and I accepted it, and this is supposed to stop. So his expectations of what was supposed to happen never really happened.
Right.
And so now he's at a conflict of interest. He's mad at God again, right? And I'm like, why? I did exactly, you said accepted. I accepted it, and now I'm still hurting him. And I told him, I said, look, man, I get it. I do. But I'm gonna tell you right now,
get it.
It doesn't stop.
No, it doesn't.
It just means that you've come to a place of acknowledging your moments without your individual. Or whatever the situation may be. You just came to a place of, I like that. Acknowledge.
Well, it's acknowledging the scars that I believe we all carry. It's like I can't say that scar doesn't exist, because I can see it. I can, like a physical scar, I can see it on my arm. I know that happened. I got a physical scar to remind me. I have scars on my heart, from what happened, and I can't dismiss that. I've got to acknowledge that but that's part of what's made me who I am. Hopefully, it's made me more empathetic, more supportive, more caring and considerate. I will also hopefully tell you the unvarnished truth that you're going to get to a point where you can't wallow in your self-pity. You can't wallow in the grief. It's like you've got to stand up, and like you made the comment of start putting one foot in front of the other. And everybody gets to that point of making that choice at different times. I made that choice, I think, looking back now, of putting one foot in front of the other and moving on, but not knowing exactly what road I was on. I was getting up, going to work, doing the things, paying the bills, taking care of the things that you're supposed to, getting the lawn mowed, doing all those things that you're supposed to do. But then I finally realized, like, that's not the road I want to be on. And I don't believe that's the road that God's called me to be on. That's the shift in the last year of, publishing my book, leaving the corporate world, and kind of branching out on my own to help men. It's like, this is the road that God's called me to be on. It's like, and this is where I feel fulfilled. This is where I feel a passion. This is where I know I can help others. Not that I wasn't helping others in that, but it just felt like it was like putting a round peg in a square hole sort of thing. It worked at times when you jammed it in, but it wasn't really. And now I feel more alive. It's more vibrant. It's like, okay, and let's see, it feels more like an adventure with God, if you will. It's like, let's see what's next. Let's see what's next. It's like, it's exciting. It's like, but I carry, like I said, I still carry the sorrow of losing her with me. But that's okay. That makes me part of who I am. It makes you
more.
It makes me
Makes you
more,
more
yeah,
of who you are, because
right.
honestly, man, you're amazing, right?
Thank,
I see your post out there. I see the value that you're giving people, and and the response from people is, you're amazing, man.
thank you.
You're
Thank you. I
amazing.
appreciate
And
that.
like I
Well,
said,
it's been an honor to get to know you over the
oh
last.
man, we got so many more adventures going
We
on.
do. We do.
We got
Exactly.
so much more going on, and I don't think people really understand like what we're bringing, right?
Exactly. Well,
We're bringing different
we're
perspectives about a whole lot of different things, like normalizing the speech around grief.
exactly.
Also, having a diverse panel of
Is
all these different people that have these
mhm.
different perspectives of how all of these, and
Yeah.
there's no wrong answer.
No,
Now, thinking about the audience, there's going to be something that can relate to someone out there. And I want them,
exactly.
write in, ask the question, man, ask us,
Right.
right? We
Because
got
I
so
don't
much
have
more
all,
to
yeah,
give.
none of us have all the answers
Right.
for
But we can
everybody.
get you in the right direction,
Exactly. Exactly.
and
I mean,
so, yeah.
yeah, like I said, my experience, my wife now, we've been married just over 25 years.
Congrats.
I've never been married to somebody for 50, 60 years and then had them die. I don't know what that experience is like. I've
Right.
never lost a child. I don't know what that experience is like. I can only speak from my experience, what I went through of losing my
Right.
young wife at a very young age with all of that lifetime in front of us and all those questions and all those empty dreams that now suddenly it's like, do I continue to pursue those on my own? Do I go a different direction? Not knowing what to do. And that's and everybody, like I said, everybody comes from a different experience.
Right. Did it kind of like come easy though, when you started it? Like everything just kind of aligned and made sense to you? And it
As
was,
far as where I'm at now,
yeah, yeah. Like how
I
you,
think,
well, the how is never our concern.
yeah, I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
it's come easy in my heart. In my head, though, I come up with all these objections. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes that's just the fear talking of what are people going to think, what this is different. I mean, one of the things I would mention is you mentioned, about this needed space, especially for men, giving them a space. And that's one thing, when I've talked to clients, overwhelmingly the majority of men, one of our biggest fears is the fear of losing those we love, not our own death. Our own death doesn't scare us as much as the death of somebody we love. And then
Right.
how do we deal with that? When we carry that with us, and we don't talk about it, but we carry that with us, and then you talk about grieving. And I think in a way we're training men to believe and to know that it's okay to grieve. It's
Mhm.
okay to feel hurt. It's okay to be brokenhearted. You know, we hurt ourselves playing sports, and we admit, oh yeah, that hurt like a mother.
Right.
I had to go through physical therapy, but if our heart gets broke, we don't want to admit that. We
Mhm.
don't want to admit that causes I did it, whatever. And I think about this, and I'll share this. This is my own personal opinion. As I watch like the media and social and entertainment and that sort of thing, men are portrayed in a few ways when they experience heartbreak or grief or loss. They either become shallow men and just withdraw from everybody, or a combination of all these things. They withdraw from people, they become addicted to something, whether it be alcohol or something like that, or they go on some kind of murderous vengeance rampage, and with no consequences. If we went out and did that now in some kind of murder, there'd be consequences, but there's no in the entertainment industry, there's no consequences.
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
so and that's a very shallow way to portray men in grief, if you will. And I think it's getting better. There's been a few things in the last
Yeah.
couple of years that are getting better. I think all of that's getting better. And I go back to, like I said, my experience in 1993, there was no Facebook. There were no Facebook groups. There were no social media. There was no internet. It's like
Mm.
I went home to an empty house every night going, I don't know who to talk to. And nobody to talk to, and God bless the people who did try to come alongside me. I kept them at arm's length for my own fear. It's like, well, I'm good, I'm okay, and then they would say the platitudes, and I would accept them outwardly, but inside I'm going, really, that's all you got? I'm over here,
All of them.
dying.
All right. Yeah. Dying inside. I got called out one time. I actually got called out by a friend of
Or
mine, and he was the first person that ever acknowledged what I was doing.
mhm,
Right. And I remember I disappeared shortly after my son passed away. So again, I can only speak from my perspective.
Yeah, of course.
That moment, that experience. So, and I'm just like yourself, I chunk my days up into moments.
Mm-hmm.
So if something negative happens in one moment, I leave it in that moment, release it, and go to the next moment. And it's just if nothing happened. And people go, did it affect you? Yes, it did, but it's done now.
Yeah.
And I move on. So, and that's okay. And I developed that over time. Okay.
Yeah.
And it helps me understand my grieving process. Like, okay, I know that once the grief leaves, I can take the knowledge and move on to the next moment, but I have to release the grief as if it didn't happen. I can't change it.
Right.
But I can take it into the next moment, or the knowledge into the next moment, and be able to distribute that energy in a positive way to someone else.
Yeah.
Right. So, and like I said, shortly after when my son passed away, I went to South Dakota, Pollock, and I was camped out on the Missouri rivers for 7 days, which was life-changing, right? I mean, but it was fun in the same sense because I took my fishing poles, and I'm not going to fish on the river and not fish.
Exactly, right.
Or camp on the river and not fish.
Not fish, so, exactly.
Yeah, so I was catching rock bass, I was catching silver bass and walleye from the shore, right? And then when the sun went down, I was catching big old catfish. So I was having a blast. I was definitely
that's cool.
And it was right around 4th of July. And just remember sitting there, and I'm hearing the drums because I'm right across from where the reservation is. And they're celebrating like nobody's business, right? And I'm enjoying it. And something happened. I went on a spiritual journey when I was out there. And the question that most of us are afraid to ask God, right? And like I tell everybody, I do believe in God. I just struggle with the religion.
Yeah.
You know, I really struggle with it. And it's nothing against those who are religious, right?
Right.
I'm more spiritual. I'm more of a spiritual person. And so that makes me feel good to connect with my Father that way. And so something said, ask me the question that people are afraid to ask me. And I said, well, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
Because I know I cannot change anything. So what do I do with this? Was the only thing I asked. And I must have asked the right question, because everything else that came from that, all the answers that came from that was things that people had told me. I'm going to be used to do something with it, right? I'm going, like, it's not wasted energy. You didn't just go through this and just go through this. Yes, it's horrible, but you're going to do something. And I didn't want to believe it because I was mad.
Of course,
I was like, talk to me like I'm gonna throat punch you, and go over there and take your dog to my house and to make you come over and come get him. So I was that sort of mad. I was mad and petty, right? But like you said, it was something that now that I look back on, that I had to move forward in. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And what I mean by that, I had moved. Everybody's journey is different. So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah. Very much.
I moved forward within my grief. And it taught me. Yeah. It began this journey of just unpeeling me. Right. It exposed me. And I didn't like that at all. Yeah. It's like, no, no, I'm not doing that. Right. A lot.
Right. I hear you.
It's like, no, you need to, I'm not doing, no, I don't.
Yeah.
No, definitely not doing that. And do what? Read it. No, I tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to sit over here in the corner and I'm going to think of ways of not doing that.
Exactly. I'm going to distract myself.
Right. You argue with yourself. So just like yourself, grief brain, right? My routine, we talked about this before, just like your routine, I would get up and go to work, or get up, work out, eat,
Mhm.
go to work. Couldn't tell you what I did, right? And I drove
Right.
a trash truck, and I was like, I couldn't tell. Most days I couldn't tell you what I did. I
Yeah.
just knew I left home for a while, and then the next thing, when reality kind of set in, or I came back into that moment where I was present, I realized I was laying on my couch watching TV. But
Yeah.
I had a whole day where I did stuff, you know.
Mhm.
But it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like routine for me. I know, like, I
Yep.
had my routes that I remember by heart, so I can drive the
Mhm.
truck, right, and do my job and go home.
Yeah.
No one messed with me, just
No
like
one mess with
yourself.
you.
I came
Yeah.
home every night to an empty house,
Hmm. And that's hard.
adjusting my life as a father.
Yeah.
Um, it was I was angry in two ways, right? Because for one, when my son passed away, I felt that I was robbed, for one,
Hmm.
right? I was like, you robbed me. This was my one chance to do something right, for one of my, and you take him away from me. So I was
Hmm.
upset about that, right? And the second way, the second way I was upset with him was because before any of that, I had always been alone. Always been alone. Yes, I had my friends and everything, but I've always been alone. So then I had my son and this nice little chunk of his life, a few years, 8 years to be exact. And then now I have to have the other life overlap this one
Yeah.
to readjust to being alone again. And I went, well, that's not fair, right? Like, what am I supposed
Hmm.
to do with all of this that I got here? And a lot of lonely nights, man. A lot of
Yeah.
lonely nights coming home and, you know, like you said, putting on a mask
Hmm.
because everybody expected me to be the strong one. So
Yeah.
after a while, when all the smoke settled, no one wanted to check on me. And I was fine with that. I was like, okay, you don't have to check on me. It
Hmm.
just gives me a reason to stay away from you. Like I said, keeping people at arm's distance. You
Yeah.
know, I had a girlfriend at the time. Eventually, I walked away from her because I started my healing journey. And she did
Hmm.
something. She actually helped me start in the learning process because she said something to me that led to expectation.
Yeah.
6 months, 3 months into it, I am grieving like nobody's business, but I'm going back to work. I'm doing the daily routine, right? But I
Yep.
have no drive to want to do anything, you
Yeah.
know. I love being around kids, but in the same sense, I was scared to be around them
Be
because,
around.
like, maybe
Understood.
if I bring this child around me, maybe this child passes away. No, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Even though the child wants to come and play, Tony, stay over
Hmm.
there because I don't want to happen to you what happened to my kid. Because you feel
Yeah.
like that you got a curse on you,
Hmm.
right?
No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in my case with, my current wife, I can honestly tell you for the first 15 years of our marriage,
Uh,
I loved her and I wanted to take care of her. I wanted to be with her, but I kept myself a little bit, I don't want to get too close because if something happens to you,
right,
I don't
right,
want to go through that pain that I've already been through. It's like,
right.
so I, and then I finally realized, God finally got through to me. It's like, that's no way to live. It's like, you're going to be devastated in the end if she dies before you anyway. It's like, you need to love her fully now, here, while you're together. And so I had to recommit it in a lot of ways to her, and it's made our relationship so much better. I
Yeah.
mean, we're living, more fully now. So I totally get it about kind of holding yourself back because of the fear of being hurt again. And I think a lot of us do that in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. And I love that you said that. And we'll just touch on it a little bit before we wrap it up. And, but I think a lot of that, and I admire you for doing that. I have not gotten to that place because I've experienced almost every loss there is, right? I've never experienced spousal loss. My biggest fear is that I open myself up
Yeah.
and I have to complete that circle and actually experience this, you know, or vice versa,
Hmm.
life happens. We got to get with someone and I pass away.
Yeah.
Now this person is going to be hurt over that, right? So
Exactly.
I made a decision. I was like, I don't want to hurt anyone, nor do I ever want to be hurt again. And so when it comes down to that part of my life, I don't indulge in it. Like, so it became unnecessary in a way for me, because of like, I'd rather live my life in servitude to other people. And I know being in a relationship, and it could sound like an excuse, but it's a rational one. If you just hear me out, you know what I'm saying? You can beat up on me when I say it, but like, no, this is what it is, and I will agree with you. You know, like, I know exactly what I'm saying. So I don't want to feel as if I'm neglecting them. And I know people say, well, if you want it, you'll make time. Well, also, when I also feel like this, if I get a call in the middle of the night, someone's struggling, I don't want to have to get accused of cheating if I have to get up and go and sit with this man for however long it is. Right. And I don't ever want anyone to develop trust issues around that, because it happens. It happens now, and I'm single. Right. And I know the way I'm out and about during the nighttime, and it can seem sort of, you know, crazy. So I just made a conscious, rational decision to view other things as far as women. I look at them as my sisters. So, and if I look at women that way, it makes it kind of hard to look at them in a sexual way, right?
Absolutely.
You know, and it adds an element of respect to that. You know, knowing that my intentions are not, you know, to mislead you.
Exactly.
To encourage you, and, you know what I'm saying, maybe just to get to know you as the person that you are. And then we go on our separate ways. No expectations about
no expectations there, right?
So I have done, and I still do it to this day. You know, it's like, I enjoy what I do, and I don't want the end result, because one of us has to pass. I'm getting older. Right. So it was just me. It's me protecting myself in a lot of ways, protecting other people. You know,
it's good that you acknowledge that.
That's what it is. Yeah, I know what it is. It's me protecting myself. And it's because my friend used to always tell me, and he passed away last year. He's go, when you feel that sting, man, you don't want to feel that sting no more. And that sting comes in many forms, right?
It does. But I totally agree with you. One thing I would encourage you to ask yourself: are you denying somebody? Are you keeping somebody from the joy of loving you?
Actually, and I've asked myself that too.
Have you?
One of those things. And
because you have a lot to offer, Tony.
Well, I'm not denying anyone the ability to love me. Nor do I deny myself to the ability to love them. I received the love, just without the intimacy. Maybe my soul is more intimate with their soul, and maybe that's good enough for me.
Absolutely. Okay with that, I think that's great. Yep.
You know, so again, I know I'm not denying if I receive it, I definitely will receive it, and I will give it back in return.
Wonderful.
I just don't have to be intimate with you.
No, you don't. Absolutely.
So it makes the journey that much more respectable.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I totally hear you. Hear exactly what you're saying. Yep. And that's it. I mean, my own, you know, coaching business, if you will, is primarily focused on men, you know, because some of those same issues you brought up. There's a, you know, when I was in HR roles, you know, and counseling women who, you know, in the workplace, it's like there's always that fine line of being careful, because accusations can be made, and all of a sudden it's like he said, she said. It's like you have to you walk a very fine line. So I respect what you're saying, and I'm trying to do the same thing. I don't want to say that I wouldn't work with women, but it might be more in a group setting, not a one-on-one.
Well, the one thing I do have a couple women I talk to, right? Just over the phone.
It depends. It depends on the situation.
Right. Well, they needed someone to talk to. They found me and reached out. I'm not going to turn you away. Even though, just like yourself, my primary focus is on men as well. You know, I prefer to be around men because, and when I explain it to women, because they're like, well, you know, like, I really enjoy talking to you and things like that. And I have to remind them, there's a thing called trauma bonding. And what you're doing, because I'm holding space with you, because that's natural for me to do, and I'm paying attention and I'm listening and I'm encouraging you to take those steps into healing, you misconstrued it because in these moments you're vulnerable and your emotions are more in peak.
Exactly. Yep.
So you tend to respond with your emotions. So the things that I do will be misconstrued.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why. And I tell them, before you go out and get into a relationship, take some time to yourself. That way, you know that when you get into it, you're not bonded through the traumas.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what they're attracted to. They're attracted to the traumas. They're trying to see where you're at, and they're trying to get a little boost in themselves as well. But in turn, it's like, oh, you must love me. I love you, but not that way.
Yeah, as a sister, as
right, yeah.
A fellow human being who I want to help, but yeah, totally get it.
So
totally get it.
What you got going on in your life, Mark?
So connecting with you and being on a couple of the upcoming panels on the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. So excited about that. I'm also embarking on my next endeavor is I'm looking at writing a couple more books, but I don't want to say too much about that because I'm still formulating those thoughts. But I'm actually launching what I call the Job 2:13 project. And that's based on the Bible verse, Job 2:13, where, and I think we've all heard the story, Job loses everything. And then there's a long conversation with God and that sort of thing. But before he has the conversation with God, Job's three friends come to him. And I'm kind of paraphrasing Job chapter 2, verse 13, but they see him from a long ways off. And they come and they sit down on the ground beside him with nobody speaking a word for 7 days and 7 nights, because they see that his pain was very great. I read that and I was like, wow, in our day and age of the quick fix, I can tell you what you need to do to get over your grief. Do we just sit with people and not say anything and hold space and just acknowledge the pain, but just hold space for them? And it's like, I want to do that. I want to do that for men, for potentially maybe women. It's like, and if you want to talk, great. Because I know that the next 35 chapters of the book of Job, his three friends start telling him all the stuff he did wrong, why he sinned, that's why all this happened to him, blah, blah. And then God comes on the scene and talks to him, but in that moment for 7 days, that's a long time to sit on the ground. I mean, they got down on the ground at his level, and sat with him for 7 days and 7 nights. So I'm like, could I do that? Yeah. Could I do that even for a couple hours? You know what I mean? Just sit with somebody in silence and just be a presence and hold space for them. And I think that's extremely powerful because we don't do that. We give them the platitudes of, they're in a better place and you're strong, you'll be okay. Well, I got to go now. I'll talk to you next week, or I'll see you around, boom, and they're gone. It's like, okay, I'm still right here, sort of thing. And people are well-intentioned and mean well. And I still struggle with it. When I see something or a family member or something happens, like sometimes I catch myself going, my first response is, okay, don't say that. It's like, well, how do I want to respond? Because I don't want to give just a platitude. So that's where I'm at right now, is I'm working on creating that, and just, continuing to reach out to men via the social media and, whatever, having men contact me and just, offering, saying, hey, I'm here. It's like we need each other. And that's a hard thing for men to admit also, that we actually need. We don't want to be seen as needy.
This is true.
And we're not needy. We just, at certain times in our life, for a season, we need somebody to come alongside us. And it may be just for a season. Yeah. It may be a month, it may be 6 months, it may be a year, it may be a lifetime friendship. You don't know, and we so much cut ourselves off from that. And I know I've done that over the years.
Well, yeah, I think we're all guilty of it, and for any man that's going to be watching this, it's totally normal. It really is. Everything that you're experiencing when you're going through it, if you haven't been listening to it, the conversation that we haven't, Mark has been dropping some great gems in there. There's some great gems, that you could take away and actually start implementing them into your daily life, and they're going to help change your life in so many ways. And, and just be patient with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Be patient with yourself.
Have grace.
A lot of grace. It doesn't happen overnight.
Have some grace.
And that's what I find. It's easier to give grace to others than it is to give it to ourselves.
Right. And have forgiveness as well. That's one thing that we struggle with, especially during the grieving process, because that guilty feeling, that shame and everything, it's okay. Yeah. Look, you're going to feel it. it's okay to forgive yourself. If you can forgive the next person for what they've done to you, you can forgive
You
yourself.
forgive yourself. I
And
totally
that's more
agree.
important
Totally
than
agree.
anything else. That way, if you don't receive a forgiveness from someone,
Yep.
you got the first one out the way. So all the rest of them are bonuses.
Absolutely.
Taking that
Absolutely.
step, man.
Yeah.
Definitely taking that
So,
step.
yeah. So I just, my shameless self promo, I just encourage people that, if you're struggling and you need somebody to come alongside you, reach out,
Yes.
it's like, you can see what I offer, you can see what Tony offers, and we're all connected. Like you and I are connected. If I can't help somebody, I know people who possibly, hey, I think you'd be a better fit with Tony.
Right.
Or if it's a woman, I know some women who offer services and support. It's like, I think I'm going to put you in contact with so and so. That's what we do, because we're here for each other.
Well, the group that we're in, right?
Yes.
That's primary.
Exactly.
Trying to, because I know for a fact of where I know what I'm not good at.
Yeah.
Right. And I stay within my lane. I do.
Exactly.
Stay within my lane. So I know that if I stay within my lane, I get someone that not compatible, that I know for certain that I can't do anything, I will talk with them until I can introduce them to someone else. That way they do have a foothold. And I'm going to do my best to get them with it. Like you said, if I'm not a good fit for you, I know some other people that will be,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
what sort of encouraging words would you give, do you have for the people?
Should have thought about this before. Should have come up with something snappy and catchy right off the top of my head, right? I would just encourage people that, and I know it sounds cliche, but life is a journey. It's not lived all at once, but it's also made up of those individual moments.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I'm focused on in my own life, is gratitude for today, because I'm not promised tomorrow. None of us are promised tomorrow. Doesn't mean we don't plan for the future and, look towards the future, but it's like, are you living today? Are you living, your life today and being present in those moments?
Yeah.
And if you're not, are you willing to change anything to get there? Because that's where it comes down to. Because sometimes we're not, and then we're unwilling to make any changes that are necessary.
Right.
But I would also say you're not alone. I know that grief is a very lonely journey, and I've made some posts about that. I walked through it. I felt very alone, and we feel alone. But there's other people out there who are willing to come alongside you, who are willing to help you, and just knowing that sometimes helps. I mean, like I said, it took me a lot of years. I'm realizing that more and more every day, that I'm not as alone as I thought I was.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful life after. There can be a beautiful life after. It doesn't mean it just happens. You've got to work for it. You've got to struggle with it. It's unfortunate what happened to you. Sorry for whatever's happened to you. But unfortunately, that's life too. I mean, my faith tells me, Jesus didn't come to give us happiness. Nowhere in the Bible does it say Jesus came to make us happy. He came to save us, from our sins, and give us, an afterlife, if you will, to be with him forever. But there is a life after your trauma, after what you've experienced, and it's going to take some work. Unfortunately, it doesn't just happen. It's like creating a business. It doesn't just happen. It's like doing anything of value. It doesn't just happen.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to put in the time and the effort.
Yeah.
And if you need help and support in that, somebody to walk alongside you, that's what all of us are here for.
Exactly.
You and me and others. And, there's groups out there. We can put you, we can have you join one of our online groups where there's a lot of support. And sometimes for a while, it's just sitting and just kind of, being a lurker, but knowing that there's other people out there that are struggling too.
Yeah.
So that's a long-winded. I should have been very succinct.
Oh, no, you're fine. It just brings me back to that quote: "If you build it, they will come." Right?
Yeah.
Think about that for a minute. We're building something beautiful out here, and a great thing about it is that we're not asking you to come; we're coming to you.
Right.
What I'm saying? In every way, form, or fashion, to make sure that everyone has an opportunity at using these resources that are available to you, but also have an understanding of the people that you're engaging with, and just feel comfortable in it. That way you're more comfortable when you're going on your journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and take us on now. So for everyone who's tuning in and watching this, man, I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I want to say thank you again for tuning in. We are your number one podcast, members of us, and we're here to stay. So you guys stay tuned, keep your head up, love you, and yeah.
Thank you.
We're gonna stop that real quick.